Thank you. I really need your encouragement because I'm not used to do this kind of thing. I'm very shy, you know. And I'm not very practical. My daughter advised me to use spreadsheet, but I'm not very practical. So I hope there is. We have a technician from the student council. Okay, in case of problems. Okay, Ms. Yiannakis and myself, we are Africans, right? We are Africans, and you are Africans too. No, you don't believe me. Okay, well, we should. So, I will start with a song that obsessed my nights and still obsessed my nights. When I was 13 years old, I could hear it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I did not realize what it meant. It meant something very different for me than it did for the people I lived with, the African people I lived with. For me, it meant a beautiful, catchy tune for a while. For them, it meant an immense joy, decolonization, independence, the free rule. They would be at last rid of the colonizers of the Europeans. And for me, it was a heartbreak because it meant I would never come back to Africa, where I was born and have only lived and known until then. Okay?
Africa is considered the father of mankind. You know that, right? You know that, no? Why? Because this is where they found the oldest skeleton, the oldest person you see, our ancestor. Considered our ancestor. And recently, I just read that when I studied the preparing presentation, they found the oldest tools, even older than they thought men were able to make tools, and this is from Kenya. Okay. And it is thought that Africa's population was large, but for some reason people started moving out of Africa and they spread to colonize the world. Of course, we're talking about thousands of years, 10,000 of years before. So if Africa is the father of humankind, then we're all Africans, right? And Mother Africa connects us all. I recommend this website, Museum of African Diaspora in San Francisco. They have a beautiful website and it's full of useful information to complete this presentation. But let's go back. How do the Europeans, and when the Europeans came to colonize, why I was born in Africa, why Ms. Yiannakis was born and grew up in Africa. There's a reason, because for a long time Africa was a completely unknown continent. But the Europeans heard, as thanks to Marco Polo, among others, that in China and India it was full of wealth and resources and luxury things, and they all wanted to go and get them, but by land it was so complicated and so difficult and dangerous. So they tried to find new ways to reach India and China. The Spanish with Magellan, you know that, and the Portuguese with Vasco da Gama were the first to sail around Africa. So on the way, of course, they didn't have the technology to sail directly, so they had stopovers in Cabo Verde, where they still speak Portuguese, and the mouth of the river Senegal, and the river Niger, and Congo, and they had settlements along the coast, but it was not a permanent settlement, okay? The Arabs too started moving from Arabia and conquered most of Africa. So we had Arabs here, Islamic world here, and we had settlements on the coast of Portuguese, and then the Dutch, and then the English, and then the French, and then all those people. But very few people knew what was inside Africa, who were the Africans. You had a lot of kingdoms, a lot of empires, kings, emperors, and of course a lot of ethnies and tribes. They lived maybe not peacefully, but they had their own life and their own borders, their own territories. They knew the Mossi, the Bantu, etc. They were considered anyway black, that is, hardly less than human, and maybe less than human. The Islamists used the black people as slaves. They were the first maybe to use black people as slaves, and then the Europeans did the same. Okay, the British did not start. I think the Portuguese started. They had explored this. So Brazil, they speak Portuguese, as you know. And across the Atlantic, you can see Angola. Angola is also Portuguese belonging. So the Portuguese imported black people, which they considered saints. You can see how they were lodged inside the boats, inside the ships. Like objects you put in order, so you waste less space and you can transport the most people. And then you have the cells. Okay, here you can treat, but maybe if I can enlarge this, yes, to be sold on Thursday the 3rd, a cargo of 94 prime healthy Negroes. Okay, men, children, etc. They all had a price, of course, and they were only considered goods, merchandise. Okay. Until thanks to maybe the philosophers, Enlightenment philosophy, until the French Revolution came, the American Revolution, the Americans rebelled against the British occupation, etc. So the idea of human rights and the idea that maybe the blacks had a soul too, maybe the blacks were humans, maybe the Africans were not so different and they needed to be treated more humanly, then they decided to abolish slavery. Okay? But abolishing slavery, the European countries lost very good results because the triangular trade was very profitable for England, France, Ireland, etc. And at this point, they started, maybe let's see if inside there are goods, they started exploring from the rivers, and they started exploring from south to north, from north to south, from east to west, from west to east, the French, English, the German, buying territories or occupying territories by violence and deciding, okay, this whole area is for France, or this is for Germany. I'm doing it for the king of Germany or Prussia or whatever, or for the queen or the king of England, okay? And until at a certain point there was a conflicting situation, because here in Fachoda, the English that had come down from Egypt, because the dream of the English was to have one huge territory from Cairo to Cape Town, and they might hear the French that had come from here, and nearly a war between France and England started there. So they decided that they needed to put order in all that, and they said, let's have a conference, and decide what belongs to whom. And that was the Berlin conference that Ms. McKinney knows very well about. Of course, they thought they were bringing in Europe, in France, in England, all this occupation of the territory. They never asked the Africans what they thought about all this. They were never concerned as, so they thought, well, we're bringing civilization because they are behind, they are barbarians, okay? And in Berlin, I think it's 14 nations decided to divide Africa as if Africa was a slice of cake, and okay, you can have this, you can have that, I have this, you have that, okay? And this is how it ended. This is French, okay? Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, all the Western Africa, and French Equatorial Africa, and this is English here, and all this, and you can see that the English could not make it to have match their two ends, Cairo to Cape Town, because here the Belgian, the king of Belgium, Leopold II, was very ambitious and managed, can you hear me? Thanks to Stanley, to occupy the richest territory, Congo, okay? And the Germans have here, the Germans were here, the Germans were here, but since the last World War I, the territories were taken away from them, and England took this, and South Africa took this, and the French and England divided this, of course, without asking the local populations what they thought about all that, okay? That is, for example, you had a kingdom with the same tribe, the same people living here and there, but all of a sudden, some of them or their cousins were English, and the rest of the family was French, and they had to follow different rules without ever being asked their concern, and against every democratic principle that ruled the homeland. Okay? You can see how artificial the borders are. You can see here, you just draw a line, okay? And people on this side are French, people on the other side are German. Africans also resulted as a valuable source during the world wars. They may have lasted longer, particularly World War I, without the help of all the African soldiers. England, Britain particularly, imported, let's put it this way, to fight where? To fight in the snow they had never seen in Germany, in northern France, or even during World War II to fight in Burma, in Asia, against the Japanese or against, and they were just, they said, okay, you belong to France, so you go and fight for France. You belong to England, and those 10th graders, there are 10th graders here? 10th graders? No 10th graders? One 10th grader? You remember the visit when you went to the cemetery in, you see the graves of soldiers from Nepal, the soldiers from South Africa, from every part of the world, okay? This had a consequence because these soldiers, these Africans, realized that maybe Europe was not that strong as it seemed to be. And also they discovered that the principles, the democratic principles that ruled the countries in Europe, the democratic principles, were not applied in the colonies. So after World War II, they claimed to have independence. I'm not going to go through the entire process. You do that in your history class, I'm pretty sure at a point or another. But it ended up of, 15 years after World War II, most African countries were independent. And we're around 1960. Independence, cha-cha. Remember at the beginning of the lesson? Okay? Lesson. They were independent in the borders that the Berlin Conference had drawn. That is, non-natural borders, and those borders, artificial borders, are bringing the conflicts
that are plaguing Africa today, because people have been separated. The French or the English or the Belgians, but mainly colonizers, used one tribe against the others in order to be able to rule and control them more easily. And so the white left, I left, my family left Africa, and the Africans had self-rule, but all this was done in such a rushed way that they were not prepared for many reasons, okay? They didn't have the competences, they didn't have time, the colonizers, the French, the British, etc., the Belgians didn't have time to prepare local administrators, to prepare people, and also the economy went down. But Africa is full of natural resources. It has everything: gold, diamond, oil, gas, everything, everywhere. And well, many countries are interested in that. So decolonization happened officially, but economically, no. The African countries are used by many other countries for their goods. Have you heard about mineral conflicts or what? Okay. Oops. Child labor. Modern slavery.
Africa has a shape of a broken heart and the heart of a broken land. You fell from heaven straight to hell. Now your children are missing. Try to understand who I am. Year after years, God, it feels the same. Party favors, everybody's gone. Ain't no war that I know anybody won. Africa has the shape of a broken heart.
So Mr. Bichon left Africa in the 1960s. I had left a couple of years before that, during the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya, which is where I was living. And I then moved back to South Africa in the 1970s. And one of my first memories was walking into a little grocery store with my siblings, and a lady, white lady behind the counter said, "Get out, out." And I thought, what have I done wrong? What have the kids done wrong? And she pointed to a sign above the door that said, "Net ni blanc," which means non-whites only. I had actually gone into the shop through the wrong door, and she pointed, there was another door right next to that said, "Net blanc," whites only. And I should have gone in through that door. And now I've just come back. We're going from the 1960s, 70s to today. I came back a week ago, and in South Africa at the moment there is a horrific amount of xenophobia, where instead of it being white against black and black against white, it's black against black. And people are migrating from the north of Africa, from Nigeria, from Malawi, from Zimbabwe, from Mozambique, looking for work. There have been floods, there have been droughts, they have no crops, no homes, and they're moving south and getting into South Africa, which is sort of the land of gold for them. But the local people find that their jobs are being taken, places in the schools are being taken, and so they are fighting against their brothers. And you'll see from the quotations, have a look. Okay, this This is from the Nelson Mandela Forum, where violence against those perceived to be foreigners is a terrible failure of memory. International solidarity played a vital role in ending apartheid, and South Africa's neighbouring countries all paid a great price for supporting the liberation movements. Mandela spoke before he died, and then we have Archbishop Desmond Tutu. One before. Okay. Racism, xenophobia, and unfair discrimination have spawned slavery when human beings have bought and sold and owned and branded fellow human beings as if they were so many beasts of burden. And it's actually very sad to see this, that having fought for decolonization, for their freedom, this is now happening. And many people feel that this is being fueled by governments, by their leaders. And I'd like to just read something to you. Independence gave hope to Africa, a dream that was quickly shattered. Decolonization did not bring the happiness they were looking for. It continued in a different way due to lack of organization and betrayal by their own leaders. We look at places like Burundi, Zimbabwe, leaders who do not accept democracy and try to stay in power. There's also exploitation by the multinationals, as Mr. Bichon pointed out to you, looking for all the minerals, the resources, oil, many different things. And it's sad to see that we've come the full circle of fighting for freedom, and then the freedom is now being abused. Okay, so I'll hand you back to Mr. Bichon.
Okay, just to let you know, if you see someone in the street, an immigrant, and probably behind, if you ask him to write down his story, he's going to write an interesting novel, a very novel. I mean, have to really go through a hard process before writing here. I wanted to know if you have questions. You are in an international school, you are in grade 9, grade 10, maybe grade 11, I don't know if any grade 11 here. Yes, Aloysia. So pretty soon you will have to decide your future, your destination, your jobs, where you're going to work. Just think twice where you can be somewhere where you can help or do something to maybe change this situation. Is really, really serious now. Okay? Questions?
Africa. The situation in Africa. How about people having to leave their country for many reasons? Like you want to say about Malawi and deforestation?
Yeah, I was also, same time I visited, apart from visiting Kenya now and Malawi, where when I left Malawi 25 years ago, there were lush forests, there were rainforests, every mountain was covered in trees. I went back now and I was shocked. There were no trees. That was my first impression. There's erosion, there were terrific floods, but now that the floods have subsided, there's no drinking water. And this is another effect of what's happening throughout Africa. And again, those people, where do they go? They go south, they're discriminated against. They come north, they try and risk their lives to get to Europe, and you all know what happens. So,
They go east, they go to Asia, they go to reach America. That's a continent that has been always, as you can see, discriminated. People enslaved, the country raped, the people actually killed, and the children, the women, everyone. It's really, really something we should think when we see all these boats of people coming. Why? And what can we do? What is there to do? Send them back?
Is this cause using the tree carving out there, for example, is this cause because of some ecological problem?
No, the problem with the trees, there are several things. One is the local people use wood, firewood for cooking. Another one is multinationals have come in and ordered wood to make furniture, and forests have just been demolished, overnight razed. And without people thinking, well, perhaps we should plant trees to replace what's missing, there's now a project run by Ripple Africa called Greenbelt, in which they're trying to build areas of, or plant areas of trees around every village and make sustainable farming for the local people. And slowly it's working, but it's just so sad as you fly over the country, you just look down and it's becoming like a desert. You know, lack of trees, lack of water.
It's also a place for economic interest. So
Yeah, exactly. And lately in Malawi, they've started to drill for oil in the lake. So around the lake shore, they're building sort of hospitals, roads are going in, all this kind of thing. Hopefully it will help the local people, but that doesn't always happen. As we spoke about earlier, exploitation.
Like I say that we are Africans, and as Africans, our heart is soaring, okay? Because I didn't put a picture of me with my classmates. My classmates were all black, and of course they have my age, they're old. But their children, their grandchildren, my children are comfortable and happy and looking for a bright future. They have good education. But maybe their children, their grandchildren are among those trying to cross the Mediterranean, or are among those trying to reach a better place for a better life.